Grizzlies fans, it's time for another Grizz game day update. The Grizzlies will take on the San Antonio Spurs this evening for the third and final time. Joining me once again for this one, I'm really excited, Noah. It's Noah Magaro-George, and I am most excited for this game because one, it's the last time we see Wemby. Two, this is like a winnable game, I think, for both teams.
Yeah.
Uh, and three, this could be one of the Grizzlies' only, and I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm sorry if I offend you early on, season sweeps this season. The Grizzlies won the first two matchups. Noah, what are you most looking forward to tonight?
I think I'm also looking most forward to this being maybe one of the few wins that the Spurs can pick up here towards the end of the season. They're on pace right now to have the worst record in franchise history. I know Wemby doesn't want that. I'm sure a lot of the other players don't want that. So fans definitely don't want that. So yeah, I mean, I think if they can pick up a win, I think that's an exciting possibility because there just have not been a lot of those to go around for the Spurs, and it's been a long season.
Yeah, the Spurs are coming off a loss to the Mavs. The Grizzlies actually are looking to avoid five straight losses. They've lost four in a row coming into this one. Um, if we dive in just really just for a quick little moment, Noah, the last time these two teams played was back in January, and the rosters looked very different because the Grizzlies, they obviously had Dez was in, and Dez is doubtful tonight. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in, but Jaren had only 10 points and 7 rebounds, where Wemby had 20 points, 7 rebounds. Keldon Johnson was another guy who had close to 20 points. I think he had 19. Um, how can Jaren take advantage of tonight?
I don't know. I just look at that Grizzlies roster. They're so short-handed. I think obviously they're going to need him to be more aggressive. They're probably going to run a lot of things through him just because they don't have a lot of healthy bodies who are the rotation regulars. But I don't know that there's a lot of ways they can take advantage of the Spurs. They're playing better basketball since the All-Star break. They're shooting, I think, top 5 percentage from three after the All-Star break. Their defense has been close to top 5 in the NBA over the last 15 games when Wembanyama is on the floor, and the Spurs have been letting him play almost 35 minutes per game since the All-Star break. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news for Grizzlies fans, but I don't know that there's a lot of ways that the Grizzlies can take advantage of the Spurs because they simply are just playing better, even though their record doesn't necessarily indicate that.
Gigi Jackson is a bright light for the Grizzlies roster. Like in the second half of this season, he's coming off a career high 35 points, like a 35-point game. He is the leading rookie scorer in this month, in the month of March. Spurs have not seen him yet. What are you looking forward to seeing from Gigi? What have you liked from Gigi?
I really liked Gigi coming out of the draft. I thought he probably would slip into that second, late first round territory just because he was so undisciplined. The body language was bad. The fundamentals looked bad, but the flashes of being able to self-create at his size, the fluidity at his size, just some of that hip flexibility where he's able to move more like a guard and handle the ball like a guard. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I've watched some Grizzlies games here and there. I know that they've been down and they've been shorthanded, but he has been such a bright spot. It is fun to watch him score. He's shooting the three ball lights out, which is not necessarily something I was expecting, but he's also been hustling on the boards. He's been creating for himself a little bit off the dribble. So I'm just looking forward to what is he the youngest player in the NBA this season? Just balling out a little bit. So I don't know if he's going to be the difference maker that makes the Grizzlies beat the Spurs, but certainly is entertainment value. And if you love basketball, you got to love Gigi Jackson right now because he's been a lot of fun.
Gigi Jackson has been a lot of fun. Shall we talk about the Spurs just a little bit before we head on out and get ready for the game? One thing the Spurs do really well is share the ball. They're coming off a game, although it was a loss, they had 31 assists. They're second in the league in assists per game. Does that speak to how much they play as a team? Like, how does that affect their offense? Like, how have you seen the way that they're able to share the ball win them games?
Yeah, I think another fun note to add to that is they have the longest streak in NBA history, like ever, for at least 21 assists in a game. So they share the ball every night. I think it's a philosophical thing for Pop, even with, the teams back with Timmy and Tony and Manu. And then when they started transitioning to LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard, and then DeMar Rosen, and then DeJounte Murray, and now obviously the Devin Vassell and Wembanyama core, they share the ball. That's what they do. They don't really rely on one person to go out there and, pound the rock and dribble the air out of the ball. They share the ball, they move. I think the big difference though between, some of the teams that used to win a lot of games and be in the championship discussions is this team's super young. And even though they share the ball, it's a little clunky.
Okay.
They bump into each other at times. They're not really timing slips, cuts great. They're a team that sometimes they can get caught standing around, but they do share the ball. Some of that is, the philosophical principles that Popovich has. And I think some of it is they just don't have a lot of talent outside of Wemby, Keldon, Devin, who can go get their own. So if they can't go get their own, they have to share it because there's just not a lot of advantages being created by others out there. So yeah, I think the Spurs like to move the ball. They will move the ball, but they're also not a great offensive team. They're certainly not a juggernaut in any, way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah, one thing to keep in mind with that is that both these teams are in the bottom 10 in points per game. So, I mean, the Grizzlies scored 120 points the first time these two teams played, but since then, like that last game was 106 to 98. This is very like it's going to be a low scoring game. Defense is a major key. Let's end with this, Noah, because this is our third time. I'm going to end with something a little different. I want you to do for the Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson Jr. will be a focal point on the offensive end in the starting lineup. GG Jackson has kind of gone in between starting and not starting, but usually he comes off the bench. So can you give me the matchup with Jaren? Okay, so I'm going to do this. If you look at the Spurs roster, Jaren will be starting. Who's the matchup with him in the starting lineup? And then who's the matchup with GG Jackson, who will be a focal point for the offense coming off the bench?
I would have to imagine Wembanyama's matching up with Jaren Jackson Jr. I know the Spurs have sort of at times moved Wembanyama to the wing, but since he's become the starting center, he's mostly matched up with the starting centers. He's banging bodies with Valanciunas and he's banging bodies with guys like Jokic and Embiid. And like, I think they're not going to be afraid to have him going with Jaren Jackson Jr. As for GG Jackson, I think he's probably going to get Julian Champagnie. Julian Champagnie started at power forward a ton of games this season. It's really been more small ball around Wembanyama. So I don't know that he's given a lot of credit for how good he's been on the defensive in this season, but Julian Champagnie is definitely a guy who, as long as he's knocking down his threes, he's in the game. Now, if he isn't knocking down threes, the Spurs can't really afford to have him out there because he's not a great cutter. He's not a great finisher. He doesn't handle the ball and he doesn't do anything really as far as like playmaking goes if he's not knocking down threes. So I think your best hope for GG Jackson to have a good matchup out there where they're having to put bench players on him is that Julian Champagnie isn't knocking down threes, which is very possible. There's been long stretches where he goes 5-6 games without making a three. So those are the two guys who will be matching up with the two guys you mentioned. We'll see what happens, but I definitely like GG Jackson's matchup more than, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s. Wemby is a defensive force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of his blocks where he like doesn't even jump. He's just like, boop. We get it, Victor. Noah, thank you so much for your time today and this season. We appreciate you so, so, so much. And hey, let the best team win tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.